Welcome to Creative Spirit Gathering. I'm your host, Reverend Jen Hutchins, founder of Unity Arts Ministry. Today, we are exploring surface design in our art journals. I'm going to be sharing with you a bunch of examples of what I've used to journal in as we talk about the canvas of not only our journal and that surface, but the canvas of our life. I love this quote by Henry David Thoreau. The world is but a canvas to our imagination. The world is but a canvas to our imagination. And so just imagine what we can create when we really look at ourselves as the artist of our lives, as well as what we put on the page. And the elements and principles of design that artists use, worldwide have been using for years and years and years are themes that we're going to explore as ways of deepening not only our creative practice, but also our spiritual practice. Unity Arts Ministry is a nonprofit 501c3 organization dedicated to creating a creative path for your spiritual journey. This program is made possible through donations from people just like you. That means you. So if you could please take a moment to share from your heart a donation over on our website at unityartsministry.org. We will keep this fun going and help make this program possible for everyone, no matter their situation. This program is available Monday mornings on Zoom at 10 o'clock Central Time, and also available on YouTube and on our website, again, at unityartsministry.org. So if you ever miss a class or you sign up and something happens and you're not able to join in, you can find that information right there on our website or again on YouTube. All the archives are there for you. So let's grab your journals and get started. The world is but a canvas to our imagination. Before we jump into these design concepts that I'm talking about, like balance, and structure and texture, creating composition on the page, the first thing we need to talk about is surface. What are we going to put it on, right? What is our canvas that we're using? It's important for us to have a surface that's going to withstand whatever we're going to throw at it. Now, in our journals, if we fill our journal with really thin tissue paper and we start loading it with paints and collage and watercolor paper, it's going to tear and rip, and we're going to get frustrated because we're trying to build these textures and layers and it's not working for us. It's the same thing with our lives. How often in your life are you trying to do a million things and realize I've got too much material for the surface, this grounding, this canvas of my life that I've created? So we need to develop ways to strengthen our own core. So as we're piling these things up in our lives, we've got that structure to it, that we have some sort of strength behind our practice. So in arts and design, they often talk about surface. And surface can be defined as the outermost layer of something, right? I don't know, the surface of my journal, right? It's here's the surface, right? This is where it connects. My physical hand can connect to something else physically. But when we're talking about art, we're creating, especially if we're doing 2D art, we're creating something that's three-dimensional on a two-dimensional form. So the form itself, the canvas, is the surface. Or in this case, right, in our journals, the page becomes the surface that we're designing on. So as we're looking at, there are design elements around surface, like where do we put things, how do we relate to them. But the first thing we need to look at is the actual material itself. Now, I know some of you were talking about, well, we're starting a new theme today. So should I start a new journal? What kind of paper should I use if I get a new journal? So hopefully today's lesson will help answer those questions for you, as well as provide some other food for thought. So paper itself, right? As I'm sure you've realized, not all paper is created equal. There's varying weights, absorbency, water soluble materials, flexibility, etc. So when we're looking at what you want to use for your art journal, you want to think about what types of materials do you enjoy using and what types of paper surfaces are going to be best for that. So just take a moment, think about when you go to grab art supplies, what are some of the first things that come to mind for you? What are some of the things that you love and gravitate to on a regular basis? Feel free to write it in the chat or just think about that for yourself. Now, in my own journal practice, I have used so many different things. There are traditional spiral bound artist sketchbooks out there that have drawing paper. You can get them with different weights of drawing paper, of watercolor paper like this as well. What I really like about the spiral bound ones is I can open the page all the way up. It lays nice and flat on my desk, or I can pull it around and just work on a single one at a time. The paper is pretty smooth. Some papers have a lot of rough texture on them, and I like to do a lot of writing and drawing in my journals. So if I get something that's too thick, sometimes too much texture on the page itself, it doesn't work for me as much. So I really enjoy working with artist drawing and sketchbooks like this type. You can also get same type of thing. And again, you can get different weights of paper in more of a flat spine book. These, again, you can kind of push them open, but it's not as flat. And again, I can't pull it around like I can with a spiral binding. I've also, once I started getting into doing art journaling, I realized my crossover between my handwritten daily journaling that I was doing, my morning pages, and my art journal would get mixed up a little bit more. And so sometimes I would do art in like a composition book. So some pages are writing, some pages are more art-based. So you can use something as simple as a composition notebook. And several people shared some of the pages, the papers that they like doing are mixed media type paper. And this is really great. You can get them in all different sizes. This one's got a bit of a texture to it. It's a heavier weight paper, and it will hold up to watercolors, any type of water materials. And you can put a lot of layers on these too, doing mixed media, obviously being mixed media pages. So there's all sorts of things that are already made out there for you. You can go to the art supply store, feel them once you get a sense of what it is that you're looking for. Or you could do something like this, which is taking a bunch of different papers and creating your own journal with it. So this is something that I did several years ago. And I literally took some paper scraps that I had. There's watercolor paper in here. There's handmade papers in here, which is always fun, like blend up stuff in the blender and make your own papers. There's vellum sheets that were fun to work with. Some of these, like the vellum, was actually something that I requested free paper samples from a paper company. So places that do printing of cards and things like that, you can request samples. And those are fun to try out in your journal and see how those play around against some textured, natural texture paper. I've even put in here a color wheel chart, and I've used the back side for painting on, and things that came in the mail, junk mail to put in. So it's a great way to explore with different textures, and then depending on what mood you're feeling that particular day, what weight paper you want to play with, it's a fun way of having a variety at hand. So for those of you who love working with pen and ink, basic drawing paper is going to be, a nice simple way for you to go. Or sketch paper, newsprint even will work for basic drawing. If you like working with watercolors and other wet materials, I would recommend getting something a little bit heavier that has a good absorbency to it, such as a watercolor paper or those mixed media pads. If you're like me and you like tossing lots and lots of things on the page, again, watercolor paper is good, or a heavyweight drawing paper, and those mixed media pads work well for that as well. So all this said, giving you lots of ideas, different pages, types of papers you can work with, journals you can explore. If you have a page that is a lighter weight type of page and maybe doesn't have a great absorbency to it, there are ways that you can strengthen your paper. 2 tips for you. If you've got some lightweight paper, reaching across my desk here, you can put a layer of artist's acrylic gesso on the page. Gesso is like a thick paint, essentially. It's kind of globby in there. And putting a layer of gesso on the page will strengthen it, gives you a nice matte finish, so you can write on it, you can add paint, it will adhere to it pretty well. Still doesn't do great with watercolors, but if you're doing acrylics, add some nice body to it for you. And the other thing you can do is simply glue 2 pages together. That's going to give you more structure, especially if you're working with mixed media, adding collage elements on there. So for today, what I did to sort of explore this idea was I went through my art supply stash and I grabbed lots of different papers, different textures, different weights, and glued them all into my page. This in itself was a project, right? This could be where I end up, at the end of the day today. But I've got some natural papers here, tissue paper, vellum, cutouts from a magazine, lined journal pages. I even found some sandpaper. So I thought, what materials could work on sandpaper? More tissue paper, paint sample chips from the hardware store. Brown paper bag, you know who you are. Those of you who love working in paper bags. This one here is some handmade paper. So I'm inviting you today to really just explore what are the textures and the ways that feel good to you. What are the different materials that you like working with, and how do they respond to those materials? So before you go out and invest in a whole new journal, just think about what is it that you're looking for in a journal. And if you already got one, work with it, right? Play with that journal and seeing how different things feel in there. It was so much fun just even going through and thinking about what are all the different types of papers, right? I thought about napkins, paper towels, and ran out of room, but I hope that you have fun. You're just exploring with what are the different materials that you could use in your journal. What would those be like? Now, as I've said, choosing the right paper for your journal, for your creative experiences, really depends on what you want to throw at the page. Again, if you're wanting to throw down some basic drawing supplies, anything goes. If you're wanting to get really thick and messy, think about what's going to hold up to that paper. And the same is true for our lives. I feel like the busier we are, the more hats, we're piling up on top of our head, the more rigid structure we need under us. And what I'm talking about there is our spiritual practices. What do we have that grounds us, that becomes that surface that these other things are coming into? Imagine, different areas of your life, even where maybe you're less absorbent of new ideas. Think about places where you're really rigid, like a heavy cardstock. And when you try to add something into that, it's just going to kind of not bend, not flex. Material's going to just kind of fall off the edges of it. When our lives, or an aspect of our life, perhaps a relationship that you're working with somebody, you're in that like rigid state, then we're not going to absorb the gifts that are there for us. So if we consider ourselves, well, how do I make myself more porous, more watercolor-like in this particular area? For me, the practices that really work are turning to prayer and meditation and turning to nature. Every time I spend time outside, I just feel that stronger sense of grounding. My core feels strengthened in that. For you, it might be different practices, right? There might be other things that really help for you to build sort of that strong surface, or maybe a more flexible surface, depending on what your needs are for the day. Perhaps for you, it's baking or gardening, maybe not today. I don't know what the weather's like where you are. It's a little icy out here. But other things, music, lighting a candle, sometimes just having that a physical light, changing the light of the room that we're in can make a big difference. And so these can be like our own inner gesso, so to speak, right? They're like that layer that helps to strengthen us at our core. So as you're moving through today's journal experience, whether you're just playing with different papers, different materials, seeing how that feels, I invite you to also think about, how is this art experience, this creative expression, a reflection of your own life? You think about, when you pick up those papers that are rough and gritty, where is that in your life? Where's that surface happening? When you think about those papers that are really thin and delicate, what are those parts of your life that are feeling like that right now? So that our creative expression reminds us of our own spiritual journey and deepening that practice, strengthening that surface within. As we prepare to move into our journal expression today, we're going to take a moment for meditation. So I first invite you to get comfortable where you are, to address the body's needs. I'm going to sit back a little bit in my chair so my back is supported. Feel my feet on the ground. And just take a breath here. We're going to focus on the breath for meditation to bring us in. So take a nice, deep, cleansing breath. And as you do so, relax the body. Let it sink into the chair. Then bring your awareness to your mind. Simply notice any thoughts here and invite them to sit still a moment. Take a nice, deep breath. And on that exhale, just imagine all those thoughts coming to a resting point. We drop our awareness now into the heart space, a place of peace and rest. And as we breathe in, we're going to breathe down into the heart and take a moment of silence here, simply resting in this place of peace. Breathing in and out, resting. I am the artist of my life. Let this affirmation bring you back to this now moment. I am the artist of my life. As we gently flutter our eyes open, we prepare now to move onto the page to explore and express surface in our art and our life. And so it is.